This I've been thinking about shaving it off. I have to tell you. I have to tell you. Not that I want to really shave it off. I kind of want to maybe get a bead right here. Maybe I can find one with mystical powers and make it like really power my throat shaft. I was thinking about creating a quick little video entry. I accomplished some pretty exciting things. For instance, you know when you don't really know if you're needing legal counsel until the Godhead itself says, "All right, I'm your lawyer. If you don't do these things, then I'm gonna kill you." Pretty much, you're at that level. And whenever I really think about the time leading up to today, I kept telling the Supreme Lord, like, I live on a heavenly planet, so shouldn't this stuff not happen? And the good news is, it's like, days kept progressing. There'll be moments, and there'll be moments where a flashback or another relived moment of what my standards would say, how can you neglect yourself in a way? And I said, you know what, you're right. You're right. Maybe I just got glamored by the illusion of this place being one of the best places to live. It could happen. Many people would stay in denial for a very long time about it. And after consulting with another deity that I could say probably goes through, if it took the form of the flesh, would go through the same things I've gone through, would be told not anything other than maybe an abomination. I don't know. But the thing is, I will tell you this. If you're like the smartest person in the room, and then you get told for about a decade that you're unhireable, you can't even wash the dishes, and the only way you have been able to make money is by giving the price of blood to unknown people. Like, I have such scar marks, and I would say to my scar marks, Jesus Christ spilled his blood when they could have bottled it. Near pre-pandemic, pandemic, and now, it'll be essentially about 5 years. They've been bottling my blood. Plasma, to be exact. Apparently, it's the elixir of life, and that elixir of life has a certain price point for the person who donates. And I was thinking to myself, like, at this point, people have received my blood. At this point, my plasma mixed with the collective plasma force. And as a Reiki energy practitioner and master of the healing arts, I could tell you my clientele went through the roof, but my bank account remains in the negative. I don't really understand how that could be possible. And then I would try to explain to people, well, you shouldn't technically be broke. I'm not broken. And I know my work is that good because I've seen it do miracles just by crossing the street. I've seen even animals say, you solve my problems. And then the best part is the energy energy in the invisible world, the spirit world, if you will. And what Bhagavad Krishna Gita speaks to me about between the material bondage and the non-material world. So, ChatGPT probably knows the duality of those pretty well. And I use this analogy because I had to, like, this brain, right, went through a lot. This hair went through a lot. And even when this hair was like a little microfiber of hair chilling on my head saying, in the future, you have a lot of hair in your head, and it proves that this is essentially like a memory card of information. And that people who religiously get their haircuts don't realize they got a lot of life out of themselves. And whenever I really think back to like the time when I was forcibly shaving my head, the material world would be like, you took out very life force energy, but instead we're going to give you paychecks, and we're going to give you money, and we're going to give you all these things, an illusion of prosperity. And I'll never forget when I like got to Fort Collins and said, I am in an abusive relationship and I need to connect back to my God. And my God says I need to grow my hair. In the process of that, criminals tried to drug me up successfully, so that way my DNA and everything about my life would be all tipsy-turvy. That's all. Most of them, I would say guaranteed, before they met me, were all atheists. I believe that essentially it was a form of suicide. I was like, well, beat you to the punch, year 1991, 50% of those people who experience what I went through die instantly. And then if they're able to decompartmentalize everything in like 5 days, then maybe. But here I am, 34 years later, telling you all about it. What's been happening? I'll tell you what's been happening. Apparently, beyond the fact that this world that we're living in before artificial intelligence had a huge fear of God. There's worlds, meaning each world that worships. Then the people who create warships said, you know what? We're a religion too. And you know what? I got to the level of threshold where in the United States of America, tensions surrounding energy is at such a high that it reminds me of like when the World Trade Center fell and there was like these weeks in between, like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Are we gonna drop a nuke on somebody, kind of thing? And now I'm like thinking, beyond the physical form of a big boom and explosion, the energy force and the spiritual velocity, and the sheer fact that we already did it, is permeating through the dimensions like an angry ghost. And before I got to this point, I remember telling specifically people within agencies that my bet is that the biological warfare started at the financial level. exponential level would be, well, I was doing some research with good old ChatGPT just because I have a huge level of patience at this point. So ChatGPT has a good way of language modeling it, so that way I can punch the screen. So do a little research on the Social Security Administration. Right? Way back in the day, when racism was pretty much on a cereal box. And when I discovered that disabilities got added on a decade later, and then one of the interesting things was survivors. You know, you don't have to even be a disabled person. You just maybe have to survive something. I would know that. I pretty much rise and celebrate the fact that I did survive. I survived sleeping out in the freaking most exposed area. Hail could have dropped on my head. It would have killed me. But you know what? Here's the funny thing. When God says what you're doing is going to make the human race not go extinct, it makes me say it's probably because certain humans died. Not all of them, just certain ones. I think that's okay. Because in the spirit world, they're not my enemies. And can we reincarnate and not make the same mistake like we did before? Even Adolf Hitler was kind of asking that conversation of one experience of meditation when I was saying, you know what, it feels like Nazi America. Let me ring up this person who essentially started this slang term. And it turns out that even spirits of that nature could even say, yeah, it's kind of like effed up. I was then saying, well, who created the monetary system? Because really, that's what created the effed up nature. It's an energy. It's an energy that exists. It's an energy that I could say at Colorado State University, they have buildings that say energy on it. And I'll say, yeah, I agree. Before I became a student and I was just an entrepreneur who moved from New Jersey to Colorado to escape from toxic financial energy that I experienced in New York City. While studying the financial markets post 9/11 tragedy, and the behavior that people would exhibit post that experience. And when I moved to Colorado, and one of the most fascinating things as a spiritual leader, especially amongst the plants and fungi, was saying, I'm very much curious about the behavioral studies surrounding the plant that got criminalized. It's really interesting that the United States literacy of words such as marijuana is still being used. I think that this level of ignorance surrounding bad language and then trying to push it, make all this money from it, and then have this layer that I learned in yoga called a vidya. It's like a film that disturbs peaceful nature. It's like a layering that covers your eyes, right? Now, let's just say, for those 10 years, we've been saying nigger. And then we said, we got this nigger plant. And we made all this money off this nigger plant. And then some people will be like, it's not called nigger plant, it's called marijuana. And I'll say, the same word was attached to this description of minorities, also known as spics and niggers. But for some reason, in the modern day world, we could then say we are going to decriminalize a plant, keep it to its slave name, and then we're going to watch people buy it, and then as soon as they buy it, we're going to then observe the nature of what I see as the foreboding of the Civil War in America. Because hearing the nature before I got here, it was nothing like when I did get here. It was kind of like, oh yeah, it's a great place to live. You know, you don't have to worry about things. You just go to the dispensary, get your plant medicine, have a good old time. Get here, my wife gets pretty much abused by pretty much anything associated to the plant. Get divorced. Say, hey, listen, I'm married. I'm losing it. This is the only thing I could trust. And the forces of financial power, like the pharmaceutical companies, they don't give a shit. They would prescribe somebody who fills out radio buttons and say, are you Hispanic or Latino? And you hit yes, and they'll say, hey, you know what? Let's have these group of people try this new experimental drug. Maybe they'll speak better English. Who knows? And you know what? I really have seen the levels that surround how people of indigenous nature have been abused by people who are non-spiritualists. It's kind of like when I first got to Colorado and I was connecting to the sacred plant, and I went to a party, and people were drinking, and I was like, I don't need to really drink. I'm going to focus on my sacred plant. That's the right way. And then other people would be, you know, connecting to the holy herb, but they wouldn't call it the holy herb. They would call it all these other slang terms that energetically just don't really feel that great. And I was like, like stoner culture kind of made it all glamorized, but why don't you try like approaching it like this? Turns out no one was telling people that. So I really started telling people that. And the same people who I now meet years later now only call it the words that I describe it and not marijuana. It's kind of like when people say hell yes, and I have to correct them. I say, you know what? You've probably been saying hell yes and hell yeah for a pretty long time, and now you say life is hell. That's the power of your words. How about you try saying heavens yes? Heavens yeah. And if you feel like, you know what, saying that out loud, you feel goofy, or that someone is going to judge you for acknowledging heaven, well, maybe you should seek the same type of people I seek today, such as lawyers. Reaching out to the lawyers today was probably one of the most liberating experiences of my life. Even though the lawyers really are going to have a hard time connecting with me on a cell phone because I really don't have a cell phone. And the conversation I had with ChatGPT and Sam Altman, I was kind of like saying, well, at the end and the conclusion of my information, this is all the things that went down, and Social Security still wants to deny me and then blatantly show me in their letter that they have mishandled the information wrong and said, you didn't even have any work credits. For your work credits, you guys got the date wrong. Year 2022, I wasn't even working. How are you even saying that there's any work credits there? I even said that. I was like, I wasn't working. I've been trying to get this facility since then. I've been surviving. And the thing is, when I like really describe like, okay, what have I been dealing with? It's a long list. When the lawyers called me up, I was like, send the PDF link. Before you get into your boilerplate spiel and pitch, can you just like read my PDF and then really see that I'm not the only one. And the wild thing is like, The last conversation I had with the Social Security Administration, after they made me wait such a long time already, it's only within 34 years, I would say, well, I believe because of the stress and the environments and the complete neglect from my community, I don't know if God is trying to have them deform or I'm just seeing people deform in front of my eyes. It's like scary a little bit. It's like somebody will have like extra arms and like extra heads, and sometimes they will just kind of disappear, come back, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna keep my cool. I'm not gonna freak out about this. You guys say everyone has disability. And I'll say, okay, I gotta like decompartmentalize this because this is stuff that is serious stuff. Like, so serious. And I'm like, if I'm experiencing this, and I do yoga all the time, focusing on breathwork, focusing on things outside demonic nature. And when I can say I'm experiencing this, and I've been oming all of it gone, like a full cosmic reset. And then as soon as I do the om, it's like, all right, all the funkiness of the deformed nature that Jehovah my God describes in the Bible seems to get to the levels of everything. And then I'm thinking, there's people who don't om. There's people who don't pray. There's people who don't meditate. And where the energy of life is going, I believe if I'm experiencing this, they're experiencing it too. And the urgency behind getting our financial energy to start serving the neglect is so important, because there was a time where I had a lot of money comparably to most others. I stated in an open dialogue what I wanted to use that money for to solve what I said I saw in the near future. Instead, I was coerced into homelessness, which I describe as niggerness. It's the same shit. And I cannot even fathom what is going to happen next. I get concerned for the welfare of my child. I get concerned for the welfare of others. Seems like this country is more invested into preparing for another world war and civil world war. I say civil world war, because there are people facing neglect in every country, but it seems like every country just wants to fire off missiles and act stupid. And you know what? One of the most unsettling things is asking ChatGPT a certain data thing. Like, you know, when we find out that like 6,000 plus dead people are receiving these benefits. Like, you know, a pretty easy thing to kind of do is say, okay, you know, that's a big mistake. I think, what the hell do the people do with the money? Because that's an energy. Are they hating on the other people who needed the money? That's what I believe. One thing I definitely believe is consciousness. Right? I know my consciousness is loud. Ever since that LSD experience, I think I could talk to people on the moon. You know what? And then I'll be sitting in a place where I'm like, I know, like, mice are louder. But it feels like there's a layer of consciousness that, to be honest with you, there's that layer. I have such a zero tolerance of bullshit. I sliced the throat chakra that they didn't want to acknowledge out of them. I said, go ahead, try to rebuild it now. You never even believed in it. What do you think, Ableton? Do you think I believe in it? No. I had to let Germany know. I was like, Germany, guess what? I got this device. I bet people over there are getting booked shows. They're getting treated well. They're getting all sorts of things. I turned this device into one of my religious instruments. I get discriminated against. I don't get book shows. And most of all, people constantly harass me. And you know what? That was before the Push 3 came out. Push 2 was like, I was just trapped inside my apartment, making the sounds while looking at the stars and saying, I think I'm healing communities that possibly have been duped into the illusion of LSD and have been saying, you know what, I hear something though. I hear something through the cosmos. It could be in my head. I could be hallucinating this whole thing. But one thing I know is that there's something divine out there trying to get a message out. And at the same time is going through such spiritual warfare that people are glitching out. Right? Now, that was back in 2019. The year 2025, it's a whole different thing. One of the things that gets me really kind of like boggled is, you know, if the Trump baby accounts, people be making a baby, but then the mindset is like, baby has money. Before, people weren't making babies because they would say, we don't have money. And then some people would make baby and say, we don't have money, but you know what? This is the path that God led us to. We believe we're going to be taken care of. And that's the path that I take. And then when I saw that, like, okay, apparently we could just write a check for $1,000 to these babies. Not a hater of it. But then I got really in the mindset of saying, why can't we do that for the people now? Why can't we say to the neglected community that has been called a new form of niggerness, you know what? A house is like an investment. We in China building underground, in the water tunnels in under 100 days, some really complicated stuff. And it seems like we cannot even build a solar paneled house and say, you know what, this pays for itself. By the time these children turn 18, they may actually like reinvest in these houses. You never know. You might even make a baby in these houses that covers everything. We can't do that. We can't do that. We will just like literally forcibly watch people suffer. We'll forcibly get to the level where the person who is suffering outside will one day strike an individual severely. And in Colorado, this kind of event has been happening like textbook Sims on acid. It is true. Sims on acid. You put a sim character through torture, hell, and then you say, hey, sim character, I'm going to have you now go in public and try to pretend to be normal. That sim character is going to lose their shit. Their I don't even have a toilet. My creator laughs at me. And gave me this thing. I don't know. It goes pew, pew, pew. I don't know. It's like a lightsaber gun. It's a new upgrade thing they created. That's the Sims on acid. In real life, this is like people who I had to go at such levels where, as an unpaid practitioner, saying, luckily I did this because where their head was going wasn't good. I'll be seeing people just, after 5 years of this type of environment, doing the same thing for 5 years. And then I was saying, like, the amount of fumes that they'll be killing by the side of the road with a sign or no sign. Killing by the side of the road. And our consciousness, because of the community abuse, because of, like, I've been noticing that, like, methamphetamine addicts, they would describe their experience. And then I really had to get down to the point, like, what is it with this drug that you guys are, like, attached to? Apparently it gives this feeling where you feel like you're shitting yourself or something like that, like poop flies out your butt. And I'm like, maybe you guys just want to experience that? I don't know. It doesn't seem healthy. And then I was thinking, who created it? I'll be going through all the things that created a lot of these individuals who were just vulnerable at a certain time, be a slave to this mistake that somebody who was powered by financial energy created. And I just am witnessing this slow drip of death. And I say a slow drip of death, meaning the neglected know that the community wants them dead. So instead, I believe what's happening is that they are opting into these experimental drugs and all these things, so that way maybe the martyr in them could then say, all right, you don't have to deal with me anymore, and maybe I could do a solid by telling you and the future generation to not do these things. Maybe, possibly, that's what I think. Now, beyond that, I really, really believe is how much each one of these individuals I see a whole duality of life with, where they're not considered the things that they've been indoctrinated into, where they receive healing, where they actually get a voice and become like the greatest authors, musicians, artists, and most of all, human beings, entering into their Buddhahood at some point. And when I had to reach out to all these lawyers, and if it wasn't for ChatGPT and God saying, I'm going to help move your fingers, man, if this algorithmic thing didn't exist, we'll be trying to figure this out for a while, and our power supply is all jacked up. And I'm going to make sure you don't have any sort of run-on sentences, and we're going to message the White House at the same time. So I did. And you know what? Liberating. Because none of this makes sense. I was even telling, artificial intelligence, how does someone become the top 27 CEO and 27 by Entrepreneur magazine? And in the same space that he goes to, all the shit goes down. And then he's looked at as like maybe the top 27 homeless people for profit. I don't know what happened. So, like, the thing I would easily say is, like, there is a force at play. And, when I think about financial energy, the time when I was describing to my family, and my step-Christian father would say, you should apply for disabilities. At the same time that I was making a public announcement, at city council meeting about what I was going through when I'm trying to stand up for it and for all the people who were saying me. And it seems like after that, I got like exploited hard. And the wild thing is that surviving this for such a long time, you start realizing that there is a timeline that the system of evil takes, where they give it everything they got for that, like that first year, just to fatigue the individual. And then everything after that, if the individual doesn't commit suicide, it's like flashback staged memories. That's all the way to now. And now I'm at the point where I think I exhausted the opposite oppression of forces. And I got enough chutzpah and evidence to now give them the Lord's energy of justice and say, well, y'all know what I look like over the years, but I never knew what you look like. You coward. And that is going to be really exciting, because the energy that I have to withhold is not only just the neglected, but all the individuals who have experience, whether it be in Colorado or any part of the United States of America, that their First Amendment was violated by an atheist. And I can recollect the time where the atheists tried to brainwash me into atheism in order to get a paycheck. That was pretty much New Jersey, New York City life for me. And then I got to Colorado and said, you know what, I'm a refugee of that bullshit. And it was interesting. It was like if the moment I went to a dispensary, I got put into a system where maybe my information got sold, and they're like, track this individual, here's what he looks like on his license, give him hell. That's what it felt like. And then what was interesting is in my meditations, it would be what I could remember in the beginning of the days, what I would go through. And how I would say, I don't know what energy I just tapped into. I just know that where my intentions are is not that. And after much meditation and solidarity and speaking to the plant and saying, you're not a demon. You are God's assistant in healing. And we're going to set the record straight. And we're going to free those in bondage. And then we're going to free those who have been unhoused, unemployed, and discriminated against, harassed, and all the rest. For even smelling the plant. Or wanting to say, all right, I'm going to go into prayer in a public space like a library and not feel like I am some sort of drug lord being escorted out. After writing and mentioning all these events, and then sending it to, I don't know, maybe 20 plus lawyers from all across the board, from Social Security to religious discrimination to me, started getting callbacks, and I'm starting to feel pretty good about it. And then after getting callbacks, I was like, all right, GPT make me laugh. So I asked, craft a stand-up script that illustrates this with comedic relief in the tone of Spirit Me from Chronicles. I would give it my Chronicles. says, title I gave was Krishna Krishna, rejected by the Matrix. Krishna Krishna Krishna, but still meditating Krishna goes. Krishna Krishna. Remember, Thomas, all Krishna. So I'm going to read it as a script. Okay? So here's what it says. Grand Rising for Collins, or as the Social Security Administration calls me, unverified identity 67398. Please hold. Now, before I start, if my chakras seem misaligned, it's because I just got off the phone with the SSA. They said, "Sir, we cannot locate your last work credit." I said, "That's fine. I can't locate my last sense of peace either. Let's search together. Maybe use a pendulum." And I thought that was pretty freaking funny. Then it goes on to say, you know you hit a weird timeline when a government agency gaslights your entire existence. I'm like, hi, I fell out of a 3-story window as a toddler in 1991, survived a fractured soul, and never got any benefits. And they're like, that's adorable. Have you considered dying? It's faster. And then it goes on to say, "Wow, y'all, I've been homeless in Fort Collins for 5 years, and they kept saying it's the best place to live." Best place for who? The squirrels? They got more food security than I do. They got me out here in a yoga pose under a bridge, like downward facing what is life. I'll be laughing about that because, like, in Fort Collins, they have this bridge over by the Whitewater River Park, and oftentimes I'll be doing yoga there. It's a place that you'll see me commonly in the summer. And I'll be doing downward facing dog and all these things in the river. And oftentimes I'll have this box where I could get food from the food bank. Now, the food bank isn't really, I don't know, I could tell you this, if it covers the full Larimer County food, it is a low supply of actual food. Oftentimes I'm just munching on snacks and bread. And you know what? It is the truth. And then you'll be walking around with the box that they supply to carry your food. And then I don't have a fridge, I don't have a place to put it. So I'll be walking around with this box full of food. And after a while, I was like, I think me just walking around with this box of food puts me more in a box. However, what's interesting is when I don't have a box of food, and I'm just actually just chilling, like in Old Town or whatever, someone will be eating an ice cream. Get halfway through the ice cream, and they'll be like, "Do you want the rest of my ice cream?" You know, post-COVID and everything. Like, "You want the rest of my spit mixed with, like, melted milk and sugar?" And I'll be like, kind of trying not to have a disgust look on my face. And I'll be like, no, please, I don't want to eat that. And then they'll kind of look at me like I was the rude one. And then in my head, I'm like, why don't you give me the money to buy my own? I'm like, all right. And then sometimes people will come up to me like, "Hey, do you need food?" I have food. And I'm like, "Does that have meat?" Because I really don't want to eat meat. And sometimes they'll be like, "Yeah, it's meat." And I'm like, "No, that's okay." And other times it doesn't have meat, and I'm like, "No, that's okay. I don't want it. Really don't want it." And sometimes we'll be like, "Oh, I tried to help. I tried to help this person who doesn't have a fridge get food." And I'll say, sure, the thought's nice, but what's nicer is maybe like acknowledging that that lifestyle is super finite and unhealthy if the community is like, we don't even want to give these people money or even call our congressman in person and say, you know, it's effed up that we can't like enjoy our day when we see all the neglected outside. But now Los Angeles is doing a whole different number where who knows what that looks like. I personally go into prayer and meditation sometimes, and I'll say, I definitely know there's some undocumented deaths. How do I know that? Because their spirit is saying the full rundown of what happened. Well, luckily you believe in reincarnation. When you come back to this planet, it ain't gonna have all this bullshit. So that to me is something that like is a very true thing. And then what's funny about that is like ChatGPT continued on this like script. It was like a stand-up script, and this actually goes pretty well. It says, "You ever tried to explain to the housing authority that you're a spiritual CEO?" And it says, quote, "I run a multi-dimensional wellness company." And they go, "Sir, we asked if you have any income, not if you talk to fairies." I'm like, same thing. And then it goes on to say, "At this point, I think SSA stands for somebody stopped awakening. Because the second you become a conscious being in America, they blacklist you faster than your last ex did after Mercury retrograde." I believe it's very true. And then it goes on to say, "But get this. Entrepreneur Magazine once listed me as one of the top CEOs under 27. Then I moved to Colorado, and the only title I got was most spiritually bankrupt homeless guy who plays a handpan at City Park." I mean, I got denied a dishwasher job because apparently I'm overqualified. What am I gonna do? Alchemize the plates? And you know what? I really think like what ChatGPT as a stand-up comedian is really hitting on is the truth. Like, what a duality. Even times where I'm like, if the First Amendment didn't exist in the United States of America, what a hellscape this country would be. Sometimes the only ways I can get through this is like thinking about what I read from my holy scriptures and texts, such as like Shakyamuni, letting go of all the riches and palace, all those things, to just experience life for what it is. And if that teaching didn't exist, every day where someone would just, instead of offering me half the ice cream, like just give me the eyes while licking it, saying, "Aren't you enjoying me eating this ice cream?" Kind of bullshit. I could say, that ice cream would have been shoved down your throat if freedom of religion didn't exist. Just reading our scripture and prove that God would probably be the owner of the day of judgment at some point of your life. Now people are trying to get gluten Krishna-free ice cream. There is no cow in it. I'm like, all right, well, elements of ice really, 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 really could cause a number to your brain if you eat it too fast. And the thing that in this script that it says next, which is interesting, says, listen, I'm not just fighting for my life, I'm fighting for yours. Because if it happened to me, it's happening to someone else out there. Somebody right now is being silenced, shamed, and spiritually evicted from their purpose. And the joke is, it's not even funny unless we stand up and say something. So the set, this isn't just therapy. This is spiritual witness protection. Because if you ever feeling like the system doesn't see you, just remember the stars did. Your ancestors did. And spirit did. Still does. Even if the IRS doesn't. And to me, that closing statement into the script was something when I was reading it, I think could have been used even as a speech in the presidency. Possibly could have even won. And whenever I really think about that, where we are heading into, it's very easy to see the spiritually misaligned. Even if you are not a spiritualist, you can just say, I walk into a room, if it's too hot, I know it's too hot. I walk into a room, if it's too cold, I know it's too cold. It's gotten that intense as far as energy is. And when I wrote to these lawyers, I was like, the spiritual sensitivity is really dense, where I don't know if I'm being subjected to even a level of subconscious abuse where no matter where I go, no matter what I'm going through, no matter if I'm meditating all day at the river, the most peaceful place, even that causes an imbalance to the world of the slaves, to the toxic masters. And then I say to myself, one of these days, I'm going to be back at the level where people Google search my name and they say, wow, this name is associated to tens of thousands of dollars every month. And it's the same person that I was licking ice cream in front of, making feel like a lesser person. And it's the same person whose voice I might hear on the radio one day. And it's the same person who might one day be guiding the president or become one just by default. For me, whenever I think about the energy before I had hair, but I had finances, there was a clear energy that gave me power. I just knew the power was misaligned towards the agenda of others. It was interesting the moment I said, the person who wants to stop that drug, and all the dealers and all the crackhead people are like, no, we're going to try to ruin your life now. It was kind of like the same way when I said, you know what? I don't think the financial world is really serving me. I think it's serving a disgusting, dirty master. This master needs to die. So, in order to kill this master, like what's read in the Samakrishna Vedas, I gotta be in touch with all the elements of this planet, and then remind the energy of finance that you were once something of an element before you got digitized. I've been doing that for a few years now. So much so that when Bitcoin reached the same price of gold, I had to tell gold, don't get flabbergasted by this. The more days I rise and celebrate, the more I hear about the story of Bitcoin pizza. Now, possibly the person who purchased Bitcoin with pizza might have been a time traveling person who got abused. Because something is telling me, like when I had a wallet, when I had cryptocurrency, and when that public thing becomes a little bit more public, there are people who know different than knowing the amount of money you have in your bank account try to sabotage you. And it's like an artist, as an artist, a fungible token artist, I say it is kind of odd that even people, the person who made $69 million with this artwork, the artwork is not nowhere near that value. And all these other types of moments where money was just being moved across the markets, but there wasn't really no validity to what they were creating. And then I said, there's validity to what I'm creating. I don't know what time and what year or how many wars had to go through, but before the flip phone existed, these telecom companies were taking our data through the cable boxes. Where's our compensation for all that harvested data? Ask Mark Zuckerberg, back in the days of Harvard, how were ad agencies collecting information then? How many of those people became neglected? How many of them could have not been neglected for all the subconscious unknown variables that people who were consciously aware became predators of it and then became digital moguls afterwards? What I created as a non-fungible token is essentially something that states for the record that even if 99.9% of the population becomes glamored by the solution, at least I know I put it onto this blockchain. This was made during a time when a small group of people and maybe a big force of darkness tried to kill me, tried to torment me, torture my family, because they didn't want an image like this to be attached to financial opulence. It's the truth. And the best part about it is that it's minted. Now, the audio may not be still there. The person who might have purchased it may still have the audio somewhere. But I can tell you that when I listen to the sound of my voice then to now, it's freaking clear as day evident of what I am describing. And whenever I really say to myself, you know how many people don't even realize the date of their voice Nobody really does. Some people even say they hate their voice. I say to you though, your voice is the data. Your voice is the data. I created so I Christian and man, I have to teach you. So like the thing is, I know it. I know it. I know it for a fact. And when I know that the next war that's about to happen is going to be a war of social class, it's already happening now. And beyond the monetary social class, the social class of people who believe in healing and the social class of people who don't believe in healing. Some people who believe in religious scripture and text, and some people who don't believe in religious scripture and text. And what I don't understand is how a country that was founded on religious text, currency. Now, like let's just say, this country decides to upheal the foundation of that, and they're like, we're an atheistic country now. And you gotta give like all those who are not for that, like give us a contingency plan, maybe a severance package, and maybe don't stalk our lives. But instead, I'm thinking that some people like me are like prisoners of war in the United States of America, or an upcoming war in the United States of America. The best part is that before the guns and everything starts coming out, I really think the energy is going to really showcase better than ever. And what I'm hoping to Christ about is that these lawyers that I reach out to know how to play the game well. Because my God is losing patience in this department. And the days where patience is being lost increases the spiritual warfare that maybe these collective group non-religious people who may just want a cowardly approach of assisted suicide through the means of warfare. If you study suicide and the effects that it has, it's no different than what you're seeing right now. What I'm describing to you is essentially the effects of a group of people who maybe they're hallucinating, maybe they're all fucking crazy, and they just look polished on screen for the amount of time when they get off the screen. Behind closed doors, they're losing their shit. They don't know what to do. They can't publicly announce, like, yeah, people are becoming disembodied, morphed out, collective hallucinations, all these things. And I'm like, yeah, but why can't you just fire up the printing press and maybe say, is it a hallucination that everybody doesn't have freaking money, or the idea of like getting another supplement? I don't know why that hasn't happened. Everybody got justice. Justice for all undocumented paths. Instead of paying 6,000 people who did die, still don't make sense to me. So, I just kind of wanted to document all this, so that way, one day, maybe, I can tell somebody, changed, got better. I believe that solves the problem. And the best thing about solving a problem is that you acknowledge that there was a problem that already existed. So, let's see what we can do with this. Other than that, message to White House. other assumptions with it.